Welcome to Project Backbone, 50 acres of some of the driest, hardest ground you've ever seen, right at the top of the ridge in Wimberley, Texas, where we're gonna build a landscape that grows food, builds soil, and catches every single drop of water that we possibly can and soaks it into the ground.
This is the start of our newest and biggest project yet. Situated right on the Devil's Backbone in Wimberley, Texas, not only is this project one of our most beautiful locations yet, it's also one of our most challenging. From some of the hardest and densest rock we've ever faced to extreme slopes and grades that have made access a nightmare, this project is pushing us to our limits. Come along on our first episode where Mike and Adam show you around the project and talk a little bit about what's already been done and what's coming in the future. This video is made possible by our patrons. Their support allows us to continue to share our educational resources, knowledge, and make these videos for you to enjoy. To get access to additional content from our projects, Q&A priority, and more, click the link below.
One of the interesting things about this Project Backbone is that the hills are so steep because we're really on this just very prominent ridge, which makes for beautiful, stunning views, right? But at the same time, it creates real access issues. So a lot of the flatter ground that we can actually work with more effectively that isn't just so steep that you can't even drive a piece of equipment on it, we have to get down this hill first. And so we have to build our own access. And obviously that's expensive and difficult, but we have found a way. We're working with some special road building contractors who feel confident in this kind of work. And we're gonna make an access way down here so that we can get in and work on that lower ground down there. We're also respecting what's already happening here on this hillside where we've got this sotol growing, and these native bunch grasses and trees just barely hanging on. But we don't want to create disturbance here because whatever vegetation is here is holding this together and it's helping to reduce and prevent erosion. So we also want to just be mindful that what is already happening here is good and that there's not a lot that humans can do on steep, rocky, bare, exposed, western-facing hills like this. And so in a lot of cases, it's best to just let nature do the work in a situation like this.
So the steepness of this property is one of our biggest challenges, but with that comes the opportunity as we put a road through here to tilt that road appropriately to be a benefit on the landscape and to slow the land down, deposit it where we need it to be. You can see we have a lot of this sotol that's kind of doing the majority of the work of slowing down the water. So any of this that we clear out, we'll take to Desert Door Distillery for them to use, just generally trying to use as much of the material that we disturb and put our road in the gentlest configuration. So we have to move as little earth as possible to get a safe road down to the bottom so that we can manage the highlands and then also continue to manage the watershed all the way down to the bottom of the valley.
All right, so once we have access down this hill, we're gonna continue to slow down the water by building berms and swales, and then we're gonna plant biodiversity plantings down there on those berms and swales. And then of course, those will act as seed sources for the rest of the ecosystem.
So we have these very steep, dramatic valleys that we get to work with. So we'll build a handful of beaver dam analogs, brush berms, small water catchments to just slow it down, hold it in the highlands in the valley. But then lower down, there's a large, steep walled valley down there that will build up a bit of a dam wall so that it retains more water and becomes a bit more of a swimming grotto, water retention landscape down in the valley. So this is a fun project because we get to manage an entire watershed from top to bottom and see the effects of what we're doing above and how it's affecting down below. Okay, so this is such a dramatic landscape that it's wonderful to see this side-by-side comparison of management efforts. On one side, the forest has been left to its own devices and it's a wild, brushy, diverse, multicolored space. And on the other side, the junipers have been completely scalped off of it. And you can see any topsoil that was up there at one point has now all shifted to the valley. And so there's no soil up there, just pure bedrock, and all the soil's down below. So you can see pretty quickly the effect of management, especially when it's done at the highest part of the watershed. And so if we flip that and manage the highlands, it's going to have a trickle-down effect of holding soil, building soil, increasing biodiversity, and having water trickle out and seep springs down below.
All right, so here we designed the main crop garden zone, and we've got a mixture of raised beds, in-ground beds, greenhouse, and because there's actually a septic sprinkler here, which we didn't realize until we started the project, we're also gonna have a wildflower meadow over there in the area where we can't build beds where we thought we were going to. This space is gonna grow a lot of food. There's gonna be an 8-foot tall deer fence around it, and that's really gonna be the main function here, and it's all gonna run on automated drip irrigation, which we're also installing now.
So here we are in the garden area where we've used site stone to build raised beds as well as in-ground beds. We're amending everything with our soils blends to bring about great fertility in these areas. We have a chicken coop, and we'll also have an aerated compost bin down here, a 3-bay aerated compost bin to manage all of the biomass that comes in and goes back to these areas.
So when we first got here, it was kind of an oh no, what are we gonna do moment, even though we've seen the worst of the worst as far as difficult starting points. But you know, this property has fields of stone everywhere. They go from baseball size all the way up to, you know, bigger than my head. And they're just all sitting right on the surface. And so if you even try to drive a piece of heavy equipment across here, you know, you're in danger of ripping your tracks or getting a rock stuck in your tracks and damaging your equipment. So we brought in the rock mill, and we actually ground those rocks up, and that is also capable of just blazing through trees and shrubs if you want to do that, and that can incorporate some organic matter into the ground. So we did do that in certain places, but wherever we could, we kept the trees and the existing vegetation. So there's a lot of evergreen sumac, there's a lot of Texas persimmon, there's some live oaks out here, there's some agarita, some twist leaf yucca, a bunch of really cool plants that are growing in this really harsh environment, and we view that as shade, shelter. A lot of them grow food, a lot of them are medicinal, and so we want to keep as many of those plants in the system as possible, even though that means we have to work around them like we did in this case right here, where instead of having our in-ground beds, which are straight rectilinear lines, run through here and removing these trees so that we could maximize our bed space, we just built a little ring of rocks around them, and we kept the persimmon trees right here.
So this is one of the rockiest areas that we've worked on. And so the problem is the solution. We took a lot of those site rocks that were in the way, the rocks that didn't get milled into dust, and we just used them instead of importing wood and scorching it and building beds. We just used that on-site material to assemble these lovely stone beds. And it was cheaper, more available resource, and we just reassembled it in a new way.
So this is where the in-ground beds were supposed to be, but we did not realize, and the owner had forgotten, everyone had just completely forgotten that this is actually a septic sprinkler right here. So within a 50-foot diameter around this location, you can't grow any food, and you're really not even supposed to plant any trees or anything like that. It's really just supposed to be grass or wildflowers or just herbaceous vegetation. So we had to pivot mid-plan. On the very first day that we were out here, we had to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to expand and shift this garden area and make this a wildflower meadow. And utilize that extra water that we have available, but then move the in-ground beds further downhill so that they're not getting sprayed with the septic water every time this sprinkler goes off. So this is the greenhouse kit that we constructed from Roost and Root, local company here in Central Texas. And we're just really excited to be able to propagate all the plants for this really massive vegetable garden here on site, so you don't have to go to the nursery and buy plants. And then also there's going to be room here on the tall side for some dwarf tropical fruit trees to be in here. And this is just really slick, really sturdy, high quality, well designed. So we're very excited to be working with this and be able to provide this project with a beautiful greenhouse. So we're using these frost-free hydrants to create new water access points. And so we're tying into existing water lines that run from the well and the rain tank out here. And when we went to trench, we were pulling out rocks like this. I pulled this out myself with the excavator. And we made it a pretty good ways with the excavator, but there were certain spots where you just couldn't get as deep as you needed to for these water lines. So we went ahead and called in the rock saw. First one we brought out broke immediately about 5 feet into trenching. We got them to bring us the bigger rock saw, and then with a day of just bouncing on that thing, we were able to get all of our trenches done, installed our pipes, and now as you can see, we got water.
So So this particular site was so rocky that in scraping our swale areas to get material for our berm, there was really just pure stone. So most of this underneath here is just a patchwork puzzle of large stones, and then we were able to take the small amount of dusty soil and just kind of fill those gaps. So these are mostly stone. Even though they look like an earthen berm, it's mostly just a puzzle of stone underneath there with a bit of dirt filling in the gaps. But what we found is with our soils blend, and once the water sits here and starts percolating, the roots of that syntropic agroforestry system will really do the work on getting between those stones. Even if they're just moving laterally along just a shelf of limestone, the system will work even if there's not a whole lot of vertical area to go down into. It'll find its way. So after we construct these, we amend the top of them with our special soil blend, combination of biochar and basalt and high humic acids, fungus, all kinds of good biology in here. And then we top that with organic chicken pellets manure. So we'll just put about 1/4 of an inch on top of this before we do all our planting and irrigation, and then we'll top it with an organic straw.
So even though we rock milled this, and where we were going to excavate, we did 2 passes, which can get you like 3 to 6 inches deep. Actually, the rock mill started to break down a little bit on the last day, so I think this rock is uncommonly dense. There is some flint mixed in with it. It's still technically limestone, but it's some of the denser limestone that I've ever encountered. A lot of times you can break that up with heavy equipment, but not some of these boulders here. And so when you're dealing with that kind of struggle, it kind of makes you question, like, oh man, can we even do this here? And we were just able to squeak it out, but it was definitely a near thing. But now that we've got these structures here, they're gonna be here forever. And as we start to increase the biology that's on them and irrigate strategically, they're just gonna become these hubs of biodiversity and food production.
So getting these posts into the stone was one of our big challenges. The stone here is so much harder than most of our caliche hillsides that we've worked on. So we really needed a hammer drill to drill out an 18-inch deep hole that's about 1.25 inches wide. And then we knocked the fins off of these T-posts and then put the gas-powered T-post pounder on it. But first we had to get a leaf blower, attach a little funnel to it so we could blow the dust out of the hole. And then we were able to sink these pretty quickly once we got the hole dug and the dust blown out of it, so it wasn't refilling before we could get the T-post sat. And now we're gonna string our fence around this, and then we'll have an entrance gate on each one of those on the swale side, so it's easy to get in and out of. But we've found that even though these aren't very tall, the narrowness of it tends to keep deer out. They don't like to go into tight spaces. This system has been working really good for us in these syntropic systems because we have such dense plantings. The individual tree cage doesn't work as well. So this is going to be one of our syntropic agroforestry systems where we densely plant fruit or nut tree adjacent to a native nitrogen fixer, and each of our food producing trees gets 3 or 4 companion plants that all support it. All of this will be amended with our mineral amendments and our biochar, and then mulched and have drip irrigation. And so it's built to be managed over time so that we're constantly trimming off of our native nitrogen fixer shrubs, and we're mulching the trees that we actually want to get production out of.
So this is just episode 1. We're putting more energy and more thought into documenting every single step of this project than we ever have before. So we want to take you guys along for the ride from bare, bony, dry ground all the way to incredible abundance. And we want to show you how we do that so that you can take what might work in your context and do it yourself. All right, hey, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, you can hop over to our website. There's tons of good articles. You can join our newsletter. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd love to see you there and answer your questions. Thanks again. Enjoy.